Hey, it's David Fine from Retro Wrestling Rewind. Don't worry, we're going to get back to a very exciting episode in just a minute. But I have a question for you. Do you feel like every time you make a payment to your health or life insurance policy, you're making a payment to the multi-billion-dollar industry and feel like you've been totally smacked down? Smackdown, the show, the wrestling term. Anyway, there are better options. Deal with an independent broker, someone who does the shopping just for you. Timmy Hudson has been in the business for 4 years, and he is certified for health, Medicare, life, and even annuities. There's only 2 things that are guaranteed in life. One, that Timmy Hudson will treat you just like family, no matter if you need health, Medicare, life, or even annuities. Give him a call at 770-361-8271 or click on the show notes at the end of the program. And then also that Alex G's and David Fine's Retro Wrestling Rewind recap of Halloween Havoc 1995 begins now.
The moon is full. Motown's gone mad. Halloween Havoc is here. 2 demons have emerged. The Giant, he has a Jones for destruction. His motorcycle smashing, back cracking, bone crunching, neck choking rampage has opened the ghastly gate for the man who could not stay down. WCW World Champion Hulk Hogan has crossed over to the dark side to take on the evil powers in their own eerie world. Shudder to think about their monster trucks locked up in a sumo-style showdown. If survival is possible, they will then be hauntingly close when they see each other eye to eye inside the fortress called The Ring. It will happen before your very eyes here at Halloween Havoc 95.
Welcome in to Retro Wrestling Rewind, episode number 10. Yes, that's right, folks. Alex G and David Fine have made it to episode number 10 of Retro Wrestling Rewind. Alex, man, welcome into episode number 10.
Hey, man, what's going on?
Oh, other than the fact that I picked the show last week and it was a shit show. So I was like, next week.
It's the Clash.
It's a Clash, and it was. I've been getting a lot of feedback that the episode was a lot shorter than normal. Hey, folks, we can only make up so much and talk about so much crap about a crap show. But this week,
I mean, it didn't have Sergeant Craig Pittman on it, so you're gonna miss out on my 45-minute rant on the greatness of Craig Pittman. So. Well,
I mean, but you're about to, folks. I just want to say, Alex G is about to mark out on the Dungeon of Doom tonight. So
I am the world's foremost Dungeon of Doom apologist.
And you want to know what that means? Just have to stay tuned. But folks, we are talking about Halloween Havoc 1995. It went down, of course, back in 1995, October the 29th, from the famous Joe Louis Arena in, I've never been to this town, but I heard it's a shithole, Detroit, Michigan. Is that true? Or is that just a rumor and innuendo that I heard?
I've never been to Detroit, but I know some people who lived in the area, and, it's not the greatest town.
It's not the greatest town, but speaking of...
There's some beautiful parts of Michigan, though.
Yeah, I mean, probably whenever you're going into the state below Michigan, but anyway. But it was 13,000 paid attendance. Fortunately, when I'm reading back at it, and they didn't have it on the network, and they didn't have it on, on the normal version, they had 4 dark matches. Of course, we didn't see them, but I want to kind of go over them, they
weren't necessarily dark. They were on the main event. So back in the day, for those of you who don't remember these times, more often than not, they would have dark matches on the main event, kind of promoting their pay-per-views. They're trying to get those last-minute buys. Now, the WWE would do the same thing on Sunday Night Heat as well.
Yeah, and now instead of doing that, they put 4 hours of a pre-show on a WWE.
Now, from what I understand, and there's some areas of the world where that's an actual legit pre-show, where it's on TV somewhere.
Yeah, you know what show they did not have a pre? Actually, I don't think they may have had a pre-show on the current Saudi Arabia show, which of course that's for another day, another topic.
Wait till we talk about Collision in Korea, because they're very similar but very different shows.
Yeah, speaking of different shows, the show last week was good. This one, they have monster trucks on top of
It's monster trucks
on
now.
top
There's
of
a lot of people. When I kind of express my enthusiasm for monster trucks in general, they're like, "Alex, you're from New York. There's no monster trucks. That's a Southern thing." I can tell you, the people up north love them some monster trucks. Truckosaurus is awesome.
Well, we'll get into that. A couple of the main event matches that, if you didn't watch main event, you did not see it, were the Great Disco Inferno taking on Eddie Guerrero. What were your thoughts? Why would they have a awesome freaking talent like Eddie Guerrero against Disco Inferno on a show, a main event show, which
I know
people may or may not.
I know
see.
exactly why.
Why?
Because Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, and Dean Malenko were still on their initial 90-day deals, and they have not re-signed with WCW at this point.
Huh. And so they decided not to put them on the pay-per-view.
Exactly.
Oh, the next match featured. It was a 1 minute and 22-second match. It was 1 minute and 21 seconds too long. Mr. Not So Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
Don't you besmirch Mr. Wonderful. He's awesome.
Defeated.
Not the Renegade, just plain old Rick.
The fucking Renegade. What were your thoughts on the Renegade? I mean, he's no longer with us because, as we said last week, he didn't get re-signed by WCW and decided...
No, he committed suicide. He had a stripper girlfriend. Was apparently a stripper himself. Again, he was a product of the power plant, which is not necessarily known for outputting the world's greatest workers. He was very green for the position he was in. He beat Arn Anderson for the television championship, which is a travesty. But overall, you got to look at the entire landscape of 1995 to kind of understand the Renegade. Now, the Renegade, WCW doing a lot of things where they would hint or make promises that they had no intention of keeping. And the Renegade was essentially kind of a way to, hey, we're going to bring in the Ultimate Warrior, but it's not going to be the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, it's... I mean, it was... if you ever listen to any other podcast on social, like... what happened when Tony Schiavone's not a big fan of the Renegade, but I mean, I don't think many fans are fans of the Renegade. Speaking of,
well, I think I mentioned this on the last show. In 1998, when the Ultimate Warrior did come in, the Renegade was still around, and he would do a lot of the body double stuff for the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, they did a lot of the trapdoor kind of stuff. And
wait till we do For All Ball '98 because that show fucking sucks.
Well, even worse than this show.
Yeah, this show is good actually.
And speaking of a good match, I mean. Well, maybe not a good match, but it was a match that two of the four wrestlers, Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko, were awesome. They faced.
You're gonna besmirch freaking Bobby Eaton? Shame on you. Well, you're a Crockett guy.
Yeah, well, and I live next to Alabama, and he's from Alabama, but Chris.
That's not his fault.
Actually, they called him the Crippler Chris Benoit, which is anyway. That's just kind of fitting for the way that his life ended, but. Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko defeated the Blue Bloods of Lord Steven Regal and Earl Robert Eaton.
I love this Blue Bloods.
Really?
Yeah, because it's fantastic because he had Lord Steven Regal, and he's trying to make Bobby Eaton from good old Huntsville, Alabama, they're trying to make him into royalty. And those vignettes are hilarious.
Oh, God. I don't even want to waste our valuable listeners' time with going into how
I also love
crappy...
when they added David Taylor, too, because he's awesome.
Yeah. Speaking of a gimmick that was terrible, but he actually ended up being somewhat of an okay wrestler, Craig Pittman, not him, defeated VK Wall Street.
VK for Vincent Kennedy, by the way.
What were your thoughts on this? I mean, Craig Pittman supposed to be from the Marines. I'm not sure if that was a shoot or if that was.
I'm pretty sure that's 99%. That's a shoot. Again, another graduate of the power plants. Here were Mike Rotundo, who is awesome. The former Michael Wall Street, the former IRS. He's back in from the WWF. Again, they're picking up a lot of the guys off the scrap heap from the WWE at this time. But for the guys they got, I thought Rotundo was a good guy to get.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely had a lot of gimmicks. I was watching him on some old Mid-Atlantic stuff.
My favorite being Captain Mike Rotundo when he was a boat captain. That was awesome.
Yeah, he was a seaman. But we won't talk about that. Speaking of,
We're not going to talk about Michael Tender's semen. I mean, Bray Wyatt.
God, I mean, Bray Wyatt. I remember whenever he was actually, I thought he was going to actually be good. And, well,
They ruined him.
yeah, he's terrible. They tried to revamp his gimmick, and I don't think they did anything. They may have like changed his thing. You know, the butcher's
It's just weird.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
But
I had the perfect angle for Bray Wyatt, and it involves Kevin Sullivan, bringing Kevin Sullivan back, and having Kevin Sullivan kind of look at the sky and say, "Hey, Blackjack, hey, Dusty, I got your boy," because Bray Wyatt is the grandson of Blackjack Mulligan, and the Mulligans and the Rhodes and the part of the family, and then that could kind of transition to a feud between Bray Wyatt and Cody Rhodes, who was there still at the time. So bringing Sullivan would have been fantastic in that.
Boy, you should be a fantasy booker.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. Well, that's actually another show that we're going to cover, kind of scenarios that could have and should have and didn't happen. Speaking of things that this first match on the show that you actually saw on the.
Do you know what's interesting about this match? Now, this match is Johnny B. Bad versus Diamond Dallas Page. Again, don't forget, guys, it's 1995. Now, Johnny B. Bad at this time is not a bad worker. This is probably the best Johnny B. Bad that we're going to get. But for some reason, in the last couple of pay-per-views, and I think the pay-per-view after this, they're putting on Johnny B. Bad matches as the opener, and they're going 15-minute pluses.
Yeah, man.
The entire time. Because in the Fall Brawl, the pay-per-view before this, he went like 30 minutes with Pillman.
I mean, it's like, seriously, I mean, the opening match is going to be 17 minutes and 1 second.
That's long, especially for a Dallas Page match.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
But Johnny B. Bad is a better worker than Dallas Page. I hate to say it, guys.
Yeah, I mean,
hate to say it. And Johnny B. Bad's one of those guys that was much better in WCW than he was in WWE.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of those things Vince can make a mountain out of a shithill. Stuff from
the
WCW
Wild Man
to
gimmick
WWE.
was stupid. He had the injury too that really kind of limited his mobility. And then he went to that stupid boxer gimmick, and having Sable, who became more over than he was a problem.
And now he's a motivational speaker.
Yeah, I've heard some of his stuff. It's pretty good.
I mean, this match was good. I mean, it kind of involved Max Muscle and the Diamond Dog Kimberly. I mean, she wasn't involved in it, but she was kind of hinting towards. She won
$13 million playing bingo because apparently you can do that somewhere in the South.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, this was an old looking Diamond Dallas Page before he met. Before we just started doing his yoga, which, according to some people, he doesn't like it to be called yoga, but even though it is yoga, but that's neither here. I don't know. That's neither here nor there. What were your thoughts on this match? I mean, were you glad that they gave Johnny B. Bad the World TV title?
Yeah, I think at this point in his career, he deserved it. Again, WCW here, they're transitioning, right? So they're transitioning out of like the 1994 WCW. We saw a lot of guys who left, but Johnny B. Bad was actually still like really over here. You're surprised. He's getting a hell of a reaction. Again, the funny thing about this, and David, you mention this every once in a while about stuff that you can't get away with on television today. Mm-hmm. Johnny B. Bad is one of those things, by the way, because essentially what you have here is a couple different things. You have gay baiting, which is never fun for everyone. And then you have what some people consider cultural appropriation. Now, what I mean by that is Johnny B. Bad's a white dude, and he's pretending to be Little Richard and Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
That would be a problem in 2018.
Yeah, I mean that should have been a problem back in 1995. It was terrible.
There was some. That was Dusty's deal, and I know I went my entire life thinking that Johnny B. Bad, Mark Mel was a black dude, and I was wrong.
Oh man, but I mean,
good worker. I like this match. This match is good. The Pillman match is better, and I think they would have another match than the next pay-per-view that was actually better than this match. So, again, I can't complain about it. I mean. Would I prefer a Benoit Guerrero to open the show? Yeah, probably. I think anyone else would.
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna get that. So I mean,
it's much better than the goddamn Randy Savage versus Zodiac match that went a minute 30.
We're gonna kind of talk about that in a minute because we know you love the Zodiac. I mean, he's your favorite wrestler. I mean, the Zodiac's
a piece of crap because the Zodiac was a traitor Okay, number one. He was a plant put in the Dungeon of Doom by Hulk Hogan to get inside information, brother. And then he became the Booty Man. That was bullshit.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Hulk Hogan, I know you have not seen the latest shit show from the WWE.
No, I don't go out of my way to watch WWE pay-per-views that I know are going to be bad.
Well, I mean, okay. The pay-per-view is okay, but on Twitter today, Hulk Hogan said that he was disappointed in himself when he looked back at the pay-per-view because he said that he looked swollen, brother. He said he was over 305 pounds and he was going to go on a diet. So,
I mean, he's still bigger than most of the roster. Again, the WWE roster currently is not the biggest.
No.
Now, this is not 1989 WWF with guys like the Warlord and the Barbarian here.
Oh.
Everyone's very, very thin. But in terms of Crown Jewel, again, I think we're going to talk about it in more detail once we do Collision in Korea, because, like I said, those are very similar shows, and all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, but I mean, and speaking of things that are all the wrong reasons, Randy Macho Man Savage defeated the Zodiac. He was saying he was a plant, and what were your thoughts on this match? I mean, it was.
I mean, what it did, it kind of just progressed the angle here. So it was a nothing match. That you want to get to that the Luger Savage match, which is later on in the show. But Savage is rolling with Hulkster on the dark side, brother, because they're doing the whole dark side Hulkamania gimmick at this point, which involves various vignettes. One being Hulk Hogan holding a giant sword, which is bizarre, and there's also another vignette of Hulk Hogan on Venice Beach with Randy Savage, with a guy playing guitar in the background and a crackhead next to them for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's
95 Nitro is fantastic, by the way.
I mean, we're gonna have to be covering that
Dark
soon.
side of the Hulkamania, brother.
Hey, speaking of that, everyone knows that's been listening to the show for the past 10 episodes, we got everything covered up to episode 20. But after episode 20, we need your feedback. Just tweet us at the RW Rewind and just tell us. What do you want us to cover? I don't really care if it's a crap show, if we don't.
I have suggestions like Survivor Series 1998, WrestleMania 17, the UWF Beach Brawl, which is an awesome show, and that involves Herb Abrams' UWF. You get a thumbs up from me. Hey, you want to suggest Saturday's main events, Clash of the Champions, any of those kind of good shows, even. Particularly special episodes of Raw or Monday Nitro, we'll definitely cover those as well.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely cover that. And I was watching some of it's kind of a debate I wanted to get on before we got into the Kurosawa with Colonel Parker versus the Great Road Warrior Hawk match. Back on the network, I watched the network version and I watched the TBS version on YouTube. Is it me or does them taking all the original music, does it change the feel of it? Like if you're watching it back on the network, does it change the feel that you have of the whole, like?
Damn right it does.
Because
it's not as bad with WCW because WCW did own a lot of their own music.
Yeah.
Some of the songs they have to change, but for the most part, it's pretty much intact. Minus anytime Michael Hayes comes out to Freebird, and they dub Bad Treat over it, and it sounds terrible.
Yeah, and then then the one like the Midnight Express, they play the Midnight Express.
Yeah, but they changed that anyway. They changed it like in '88.
And how about Jimmy Jam Garvin coming out to Sharp Dressed Man, and he comes out to some generic music.
Well, it's even not Jimmy Valiant's probably the worst.
Well, I mean, and speaking of that, we are actually coming up in the next couple of weeks. We're going to actually have a guest on that's going to be on between me and you. It's a guy that used to work for the WWE, and he helped actually start the network. So he has some great insight on how that's.
Do you know what promotion that hurts the worst though? Is ECW. Like those ECW shows are like they're unwatchable. I don't watch any ECW on the network. There are some guys out there who are selling full collections of unedited ECW DVDs. I would suggest going out of your way to purchase those if you're a big ECW fan. But in terms of watching like hardcore TV or a random November to Remember, I would suggest against that.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely.
Because the Sandman, for Christ's sake, he comes out the end of the Sandman. That's a big freaking deal. Their music is so much tied to their wrestlers that it's it's really much identified with that with them. So you might as well just throw it away.
Yeah, no. And speaking of something that you should throw away, the next match, Kurosawa with the great Colonel Robert Parker defeated Road Warrior Hawk in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. What were your thoughts on Road Warrior Hawk as a singles wrestler and Kurosawa?
I mean, I know we mentioned this last week. He should have changed the gimmick, possibly the name. Animal is still out with the injury. He wouldn't come back till 96. So having Kurosawa go over here is interesting to me. It makes me believe they had no idea what to do with Hawk moving forward. He was never really in the title picture. He wasn't going after like the U.S. belt or the world title. He wasn't really doing anything. He was just kind of there for no reason. Probably making a ton of money though.
Yeah, probably. But speaking of a man who was only 32 at this time, and I met him a couple years ago when he was 54. Sabu with the original Sheik taking on Mr. JL, Jerry Lynn.
Yeah, real interesting. Sabu was in pretty fresh from ECW at this point. Mr. JL obviously being Jerry Lynn in a weird Power Ranger gimmick. I think Bischoff kind of loved those. We'll see. When we do World War III, we'll see the giant super ninja that looks like Scorpion, and then we have Glacier who looks like Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat.
Hey, don't make fun of Glacier.
I like Glacier to a point. They could have done some stuff with Glacier, but the NWO kind of killed his deal.
Yeah, but they didn't.
But when it comes to Sabu, I thought at the time that he was going to be in line for matches with Hulk Hogan because I'm an idiot. And I didn't realize that there's no way that Hulk Hogan's going to work with Sabu. Like, that wasn't going to happen. Not in my wildest dream. But, as a kid at the time, I believe I was 13 or 14 years old, I thought, hey, Hulk Hogan, Sabu. He's with the Sheik. That makes a lot of sense, for the WCW World title. But that wasn't something that we're going to have. Like the Sheik throwing fire, he went into business for himself here and threw fire that was unauthorized. But it is the Joe Louis Arena. This Detroit. It's the Sheik. You got to have him on the show. Sabu, this was supposed to be a big rub for Sabu, but Sabu wouldn't last too much longer. And WCW was in there for a couple of months, and then he was gone.
Yeah, I mean,
they kind of let Sabu do his thing. I mean, when he debuted in Nitro, he put Alex right through a table.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing him at a local indie show, and he loved to do some table spots and breaking glass and shit over people's heads. So I mean, he was definitely a hardcore legend.
For sure. For sure.
For sure. And speaking of a legend killer, because, well, anyway, some people.
I mean, that's literal.
Yeah, I mean, some people blame him for Miss Elizabeth's death.
I blame him for Miss Elizabeth's
I mean, there's no evidence. He's currently in a wheelchair. I don't think he can.
But in interviews I've seen with Lex lately, he seems like a much nicer dude, very appreciative of any kind of fan support that he gets.
Yeah.
So, a guy that didn't have, the best reputation in treating other professional wrestlers or their fans seems to come to peace at least a little bit with that. Now, he is facing Ming here, which is an interesting match. Again, don't forget, 1995. I want to set the scene here a little bit. Luger comes in and debuts on the first episode of Nitro. Now, there's this big thing about whose side is he on? And he goes in, in the second Nitro, he does have that match with Hogan. And, Sting's kind of vouching for him. Macho doesn't trust him. They go into Fall Brawl, which is the first pay-per-view post-Nitro. And Lex and Randy kind of, it's debatable if Lex cheap-shotted Randy on that show. It's kind of weird here. But, again, no one really knows where Lex Luger is coming from. Is he a heel? Is he a babyface? What's he doing with Sting? Is Sting going to turn and join the Dungeon of Doom? Is Luger going to turn and join the Dungeon of Doom? Like, what's going on here? Again, probably the best set of character development in Luger's career was at this point. It's really interesting because they go on much later to do, well, Luger is a heel and Sting's a babyface, but, in our real lives, we all have heel friends, but we're still their friend, even though they're a bad person. But we're still friends with those people.
Yeah.
And it was the kind of dynamic that Sting and Lex Luger had. Again, in this match, even the Dungeon of Doom is kind of playing up into the fact that Lex maybe joined the Dungeon of Doom. Now, they did a thing where they did a run-in on a match that Lex Luger was involved in. It didn't touch Lex, but beat up everyone else. And here, you have a Lex Luger Ming match where Kevin Sullivan interferes and kicks Luger, but it's purposely like very, very softly, just so Luger gets the DQ win so he can fight Randy Savage later on in the night.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of Luger, but I'm watching the network right now because I'm going to run an interview, with a team in a second here on the show live. They have, of course, they're pimping the 900 hotline, and of course,
1-900-909-9900.
Kids, get your parents' permission before calling. But they have Road Warrior Hawk, no face paint on. He looks like a goof. He looks like
a goof. You ever seen that Jimmy Garvin video? Jimmy Garvin has a video out of he bought a camcorder to the Great American Bash. And he recorded all the guys backstage doing, I guess they cut up maybe all the illegal stuff they were doing, but some of the more comedic stuff that went on backstage at Crockett. If you guys haven't seen it, I think it's available on YouTube. You can buy it from High Spots. It's an interesting watch, definitely. And you can really tell that, Road Warrior Hawk is a goofball.
Yeah, I mean, and at this time, what were your thoughts on Luger? I mean, he wasn't Luger in the 80s, back when he was in the Horsemen. I mean, he still when he pointed, he had the kind of the L. He could never, anyway, he couldn't point when he pointed at people.
He's still with Lex Luger. Lex Luger's prime, which is weird, usually wrestlers' primes are much later in their career, happened pretty early with him. His prime was 1988. He should have won the NWA World Title at the Great American Bash in 1988. That should have happened for him. By the time he had left WWF, though, his work was not the greatest. This might be his best run up until this point in terms of character development and really getting the stuff across and all that other kind of good stuff. But in terms of overall work rate, he wasn't having the great.
So, I mean, Lex Luger, I mean, your thoughts on, I mean, you were talking about Lex Luger, it's how he was in his prime? In
terms of Lex Luger, his prime was much earlier than most wrestlers' prime. His prime was like 1988 to 1990. He probably should have won the NWA World Title at the 1988 Great American Bash. By the time he had left the WWF, though, he wasn't having the world's greatest matches. Now, in terms of a character being developed better than he had been in his entire career. Like this character development up until Luger winning the belt from Hogan, NWO Hulk Hogan, was probably his greatest one in terms of character development. Now, in terms of matches, he wasn't having the greatest matches in the world at this point. But what are you going to do? That's why the Hogan Luger feud didn't last very long, because Hogan could not carry Lex to the type of matches he was kind of used to having with like Ric Flair.
Yeah, I mean, it's Lex the Killer Luger, but we won't talk about that anymore. Speaking of a match that had a lot of implications, Sting and the hurt Nature Boy Ric Flair.
He was jumped in the parking lot before the show
by Brian Pillman and AA Arn Anderson. They won by disqualification. What were your thoughts on this match?
I like the angle, but you kind of feel for Sting that he's a moron. Trusting Ric Flair once again after he turned on him about a dozen times. And Flair brought the little stingers this time. It was like, please, Sting, please help me with Brian Pillman and Arn Anderson. Which is weird because when Ric Flair and Arn Anderson split, it was coming across like Flair was the heel and Arn Anderson was the babyface, but at some point they had swapped it around.
Yeah.
So Flair comes out with the little stingers, trying to get Sting's help. Sting says, "I'll do it, but if you betray me again, I'm going to leave you for dead." Blah 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 blah. So they do the angle. We've seen this before. If you ever watch Territory Wrestling, this is something that's fairly common. Sting's out there by himself. Ric Flair is injured out in the parking lot, and he has to hold his own against Brian Pillman and Arn Anderson. Eventually, Ric Flair does come out to get in the match with Sting. And as soon as Sting tags Flair, Flair turns on him, and then we have Flair, Pillman, and Anderson beat the snot out of Sting. Where's Luger?
Yeah. I don't know where Luger is.
He should have made the save. that would foreshadow what's going on later on in this evening.
Brian Pillman, you have perpetrated the worst thing I've ever seen, Flair.
All right, now we go to school.
This is a great promo.
Yes.
First thing you learn is you don't jump on AA. Second thing you learn is you don't play around with Flying Brian. Third thing you learn is you never mess around with an Nature Boy. And the fourth thing is you don't walk, talk, or breathe unless the Horsemen want you to. Right, Ryan? Woo! Summarize this. Be careful what you wish for. All you bloodthirsty fans out there that ask for this, well, you got it. Now deal with it. Oh, we're reunited, and it feels so good, Horseman style. Woo!
I mean, what were your thoughts on, freaking Ric Flair turns on Sting and cuts an awesome promo after his match.
What's weird for this? What's weird during this era, and if you're looking at it, the WCW is kind of short on baby faces, so it makes sense to have Ric Flair as a babyface. And I wondered what would have been if Arn Anderson became the new leader of the Horsemen with Brian Pillman, with Chris Benoit, and with Lex Luger, how that would change the dynamic. And you can have Sting with Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan kind of going after the Dungeon of Doom. But nope, they turned Flair once again.
Oh man, it was an okay match, but before we get on to the next match, actually no, it's not I was looking at your favorite. Okay, folks, just want to say this is Alex G's favorite part of the show. The monster fucking trucks on top of the arena.
Monster trucks are awesome.
What were your thoughts on that?
I like the setup here. The setup here is we had the debut of the Giant. The Giant comes out wearing his dad's shirt or blouse, throws it at Hogan. They don't know who he is. Then Hulk Hogan goes into the lair of the Dungeon of Doom, and the Giant breaks through the wall and tries to kill Hulk Hogan. We saw what happened at the Clash of the Champions. In between then, Hulk Hogan's with the Hulkster, the Hulkamaniacs, and he has his motorcycle. And then here comes the Giant and a Dungeon of Doom monster truck and runs over Hulk Hogan's Harley Davidson. Now that sets up man versus man, machine versus machine, the monster truck sumo match. Where in terms of execution, guys, you have to look at it in terms of a production point of view. They had cameras on fucking helicopters. It looked great. You had a Hulk Hogan monster truck. You had a Dungeon of Doom monster truck. Now, they were kind of welded together, and the sumo match wasn't all that much fun. I wish they would just have a regular kind of monster truck rally type thing. That would have been a lot cooler. But the greatest thing about this entire thing is Eric Bischoff and the guy who builds monster trucks talking over commentary. And then you have Bobby Heenan. And we'll say Bobby Heenan for a second here. Now, in terms of the finish, obviously Hogan wins the sumo match, and the Giant comes out, and then Hulk Hogan tries to murder the Giant by throwing him off the top of the Cobo Hall. And the reaction from Bobby Heenan makes this entire pay-per-view, because he's like, what's going on? Hulk Hogan's a murderer. Where's the Giant? Is he dead? And we didn't know if he was alive or dead. You didn't know he was going to come out. You don't know what they're going to do. I thought they were going to bait and switch. There's going to be someone else in the main event. You did not know. Now, in terms of the Dungeon of Doom, why I'm a Dungeon of Doom apologist is that there's a couple of facts here that I need to lay before the people out there so the people understand. Now, when Hulk Hogan came to WCW in 1994, the world was completely different. Now, the WWF had been on decline for about 3 years. WCW is on an ascension. So from when Bischoff took over, from a little bit before Bischoff took over, when Watt started riding the ship here a little bit, he got away from all the weird old school stuff he was doing and was actually doing some good stuff right before he quit, got fired. So Bischoff takes over, changes the production, the look of the show. So the show looks so much better than it has. They start doing the MGM Disney tapings, start doing a lot of different things here. They're bringing in Hogan. Now, what do you do with a Hulk Hogan? You put him against Ric Flair. Makes sense. We never got that match in the WWE. We never got that match, that dream match, the way we needed to for the belt. To Eric Bischoff's credit, first pay-per-view in, Bash 94, they do Hogan versus Flair for the belt. And guess what, folks? It breaks all the WCW records. So all the pay-per-view records that they had, they're no more. This set a new trend for WCW going forward, and they would have strong buy rates throughout 1994, going into 1995, and past that. Now WWE, their pay-per-view numbers are declining. And then with the advent of Nitro, Nitro comes out of the box strong, and they're already trading ratings victories. It didn't take 6 months for Nitro to start beating Raw. They started beating Raw almost immediately, and then they would trade ratings winning back and forth. Now, in terms of the Dungeon of Doom, why this is so important. What the Dungeon of Doom did was a couple of things. Yes, it was wacky and it was goofy, but it was exactly what they needed at the time. Because not only did it appease the higher-ups at Turner to make sure that we had a completely PC or PG product on the stage here. They're trying to get, all kind of marketers here. They're trying to get all types of endorsements here, and having kind of this goofy gimmick on top with some great wrestling underneath it was the best way to go. Now you're bringing all Hogan's old friends. You have Earthquake coming in. You have Kamala. Obviously, you have Ed Leslie as the Zodiac Man. Vader joins the Dungeon of Doom for a hot second. You have the one-man gang who's kind of in there, but you don't know what's he doing. And it was the perfect thing for Kevin Sullivan, who was the booker at the time, to make Hulk Hogan feel comfortable, because people forget Hulk Hogan, creative control. So instead of Kevin Sullivan trying to fight Hulk Hogan on everything, like, what do you want to do, Hulkster? No, we're going to put you over everybody. You're going to beat up everybody. You're going to be a top guy. You're going to have all these goons and all these comic book characters, and you're going to beat them all. What that did was a couple of things here. It made Hulk Hogan trust Eric Bischoff. It made Hulk Hogan trust Kevin Sullivan. So later down the road, when they ask him to do something he's not 100% comfortable with, he's going to do it because he trusts those guys. In addition, the Dungeon of Doom is beating Raw in ratings, bottom line. So regardless if people like it or it didn't like it, it worked. It worked. It did exactly what it was supposed to do in terms of ratings. It got Hogan not necessarily over in the South, because he was never going to be over in Charlotte or Atlanta, but up north they kind of dug this stuff. It was kind of resurgent. It was a fresh coat of paint on Hulk Hogan, which he desperately needed at the time. Now, in terms of what happened in the Dungeon of Doom after the NWO came, well, just like a lot of other things, they went to the wayside. But no, do I personally think that a more serious Dungeon of Doom would have been awesome? A Kevin Sullivan from Florida with the devil gimmick, would that have been more cool? Yeah. But they're in uncharted territories here. Now, the thing I don't like about this angle with the Dungeon of Doom and Hulk Hogan is the fact that Hogan had the belt. I would prefer to have the belt either on Macho or a Sting and have Hulk Hogan fight all these monsters. I call it the Undertaker spot. You remember there's a time in the mid-'90s where the Undertaker is fighting Giant Gonzalez, King Kong Bundy, Yokozuna, Kamala, all these guys, and he was a top guy, but he was kind of away from like the main title feud. That's a spot that Hogan needed to have but didn't, and that's the only thing that kind of detracts from this angle.
Yeah, it was an okay angle, but yeah.
I go on for 10 minutes telling you why this angle is great. Like, oh, it's okay.
Nah.
You're the worst.
Well, hey, we got that on tape recording. I am the worst. But speaking of something that's not the worst, I'm going to play some more audio from the network. It's with Bobby Heenan comes back, and he's
upset.
He is upset.
But we are not sure exactly what's going to transpire when we go to the ring.
I can't get outside. There's going to be 500 people standing in the doorway. It'd take me 2 hours to get outside. And this is 1995, and we have phones, walkie-talkie, communication. We can talk to astronauts on the moon. We can't find out what's going on 50 feet from this building. Now, I need some answers now. Is that a whole lot to ask for, Tony?
Would you, there's an opening for a producer. Would you like to fill it and go do it?
Tony,
and work in the truck
Tony,
next
you don't know.
pay-per-view?
Maybe you don't know something, pal. I'm going to tell you straight right now. You don't know how far back me and his father go. Now, this is very serious to me.
Let's go back and take a look at what happened on the roof of Cobo Hall a few moments ago. The Battle of the Sumo Monster Trucks. And what an exciting, I mean, this was truly, as you said, a first in taking WCW wrestling to a new level. There you see the winner. Both axles of the Giants machine pulled out on the outside. There you see once again the overhead view from the roof.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it to them. They did have some great angles on the.
Production-wise, Nitro was already outclassing anything that Raw was doing.
Yeah,
Raw looked like dog shit.
But I mean, I don't think nowadays people would have believed that he fell off the roof. Do you?
I don't know. Done correctly, you can make anyone believe anything.
Yeah, I mean, they're just trying to sell it. They're like, huh. I would love to know.
We just had matches like at the Hardy compound with all kinds of weird, bizarre shit.
Yeah, and but yeah, I mean, it definitely,
Bobby sells this entire. He is probably one of his. This and Royal Rumble '92 might be his best work. This is definitely his best work in WCW.
And of course, then he falls. And of course, Hulk Hogan, he is not. He is kind of upset that the Giant fell off, So, of course, then they go to another. They go to.
Well, do you see the shot where he falls into the water?
Yeah.
That's impossible because the Cobo Hall is surrounded by streets.
Oh yeah, they're showing it right now. So Bobby Heenan is super upset, but it's one of those things that we, of course, we know that he comes back and is actually wrestling. But yes, I mean, the stuff back in the day is just awesome. I mean, the production quality. I mean,
it's better than anything we see on Raw today with your high def cameras and shenanigans. I can't watch a Monday Night Raw. I have a hard time watching SmackDown. Between all the cuts they do, you take any 20-second clip and it has 45 cuts in it, and then the shaky cam nonsense. It looks like bad cell phone camera footage. Yeah. It makes me want to throw up. I can't watch the show.
And speaking of something that made me want to throw up when I watched this, the main event, Randy Savage defeated Total Package Lex Luger in 5 minutes and 23 seconds. I mean, what were your thoughts on this match?
I mean, it's Randy Savage, for Christ's sakes. Randy Savage is my favorite wrestler of all time, bar none, period. Exclamation point. In terms of this match with Luger, I mean, it did what it needed to do. It's 5 minutes, 23 seconds. Again, probably the reason why Diamond Dallas Page and Johnny Bebek had 17 minutes, because some of these matches are relatively short. Again, this just kind of extends the Randy Savage, Lex Luger feud moving forward.
Yeah, no. Well, we're not going to really dwell on this match because, of course, we want to talk about the main event. The Giant, with the Taskmaster, defeated champion Hulk Hogan with the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, by disqualification. What were your thoughts on this match? I know you're.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
How many matches did the Giant have before this?
Yeah, I mean the Giant with the Taskmaster, Hulk Hogan, Jimmy Hart. Your thoughts on that?
It's unbelievable that this is the Giant's second match ever, first match in WCW, and he's in the world title picture with Hulk Hogan, and for the belt here again. Standard fare. We see the Giant do more athletic things down the road, but they're really kind of keeping it simple here for Paul White. Again, it's Hogan doing Hogan stuff. Hogan is still dressed in the black and white, kind of foreshadowing his turn in the NWO almost a little bit less than a year later. But I guess what everyone's waiting for and kind of all the good stuff here is kind of the finish of this match. Now, in terms of the finish of this match, the Giant wins by disqualification when Jimmy Hart interferes. And then we have a bunch of running, including Lex Luger, who makes his turn in this match. Then after that, the Yeti comes out.
Oh,
the Yeti being Ron Reese. It was supposed to be Giant Gonzalez or Elegante, but they had some problems getting his visa situation cleared up. So they had Ron Reese in the Yeti's outfit. And essentially, the Giant has Hulk Hogan in a bear hug, and the Yeti kind of just, gangbang him here for a minute. A little double penetration action, which is weird and uncomfortable for everyone. And then you have Luger. Luger's just torture-racking everyone. Where's Sting?
I don't know where Sting is.
Exactly. Where is Sting? And again, it would kind of transition over to the Nitro when Hogan says, "Sting, where the hell were you?"
Yeah, so
which is a nice little, which you don't see today, but that's a nice little piece of business they did there. But I think a lot of people do forget that, yes, the Giant won by disqualification, but the Giant did win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in this match because that snake in the grass, Jimmy Hart, put it in the contract that the title can change hands on the disqualification. Son of a bitch.
Yeah, no, and I mean,
they would go on to strip the Giant of this, and then they would put the belt up at World War III, the three ring battle royal, 60 men, the whole world's going crazy, and what have you. And we covered that show because that show was another awesome show, which I enjoy. But overall, in terms of this show, when we talk about this show, from top to bottom, throw work rate out the goddamn window. This show is fun.
Yeah,
it's fun. It's nostalgia as hell, and it's 1995. And you watch a show like this, and unlike watching shows of today, this show puts a smile on your face. It warms the cockles of your hearts, and you're not sitting there throwing shit at the TV like you do watching a modern pay-per-view.
No. And speaking of, when we kind of wrap it up, how would someone? I mean, I know we have a lot of fans of your retro wrestling games, video games channel on YouTube.
Over 1,500 subscribers, over 3,500 people following me on Twitter. Now you can join the crew by following me at RW Games Presents. That's on Twitter. In addition, just type in retro wrestling games in the YouTube search bar, and we'll be the very first thing that pops up.
And of course, you can, if you want to watch our YouTube version of this entire 10 episodes that we've covered, you just type in on search engine on YouTube, The Retro Wrestling Rewind. It'll be the only one that comes up.
Those other guys, because there's another Retro Wrestling Rewind out there, but it's not the.
No, it's retro. We are the Retro Wrestling Rewind. Of course, you want to read about what Alex G and I have, done in the past. Just go to RetroWrestlingRewind.com. And folks, you know what we're going to be covering next weekend or next week? Wrestle War 1989. I have an assignment for everyone listening right now. If you've listening before the show airs, before Wrestle War 89's recap and look back show, watch it on the network or watch it on YouTube.
Or watch it on VHS. That's the way I'm watching it.
Oh, you're old, but
I have to get my Freebird in there.
Yeah, I know, but we're going to kind of review and look back at Wrestle War 89. But for the great Alex G, as always, I am one of the world's greatest ring announcers. I am David Fine. We'll see you back here next week where we talk Wrestle War 1989, where it has Terry Funk turn on the great Ric Flair.
That's all. The Freebirds are not rock stars.
Yes, they are. And Michael P.S. Hayes will tell you that with his fanny pack. We'll see you back here next week. Same time, same podcast channel.